everyone, and I am Samantha Tomlinson.
And I am Kevin Tracy. Welcome to Movie Reel, folks.
And we have another guest with us today. It's Connor Peace.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Long-time masturbator, first-time podcaster.
All right, starting off strong, I guess.
No, real excited to be here. It's not every day you get to talk shit about the movie that killed Sean Connery's career. The best James Bond.
Yeah, no, I have a... Funny that you mentioned that. The movie that we are talking about this week is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and I have a quick history lesson for you guys. Leading up to this movie, Sean Connery picked a fair share of movies that were less than critically and financially successful. But the real kicker is that the movies that he picked over movies that were exceedingly popular and successful. So I'm going to give you a quick quiz on which movies you think he passed up for the movies that he actually chose. So the movie for Dragonheart, what movie do you think he passed up? It was a classic movie that was directed by Steven Spielberg that was based off of a book.
Oh! I know this. So yeah, because I actually did
Park?
a little research on this as well.
Yeah.
He had the opportunity to be John Hammond.
Yeah, John Hammond in Jurassic Park. He would have been the owner of Jurassic Park, one of my favorite movies, and instead he decided to do Dragonheart, which not the worst movie in his career, but I mean definitely not the best.
Why did he give up to do Highlander 2?
I mean, don't Highlander 2.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, so
that's not the word.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Quick history lesson. So these are the facts that I know about Connor. So 1, Connor, you are my sister's boyfriend. 2, you are from Boston. 3, you're Irish. And 4, you were named after Connor MacLeod of Highlander.
Yeah.
And I'm not judging. I'm not shitting on Highlander. I'm shitting on Highlander 2.
Highlander gets out there a little bit where they're aliens and some other weird shit, but the first movie stands pretty well.
Yeah, I agree with that. The first one's pretty solid.
The first 2 are on Amazon Prime, and I went, oh no, because now I'm going to watch them, especially Highlander 2. That's how that is how Kevin and I rate sequels on a scale of Highlander 2 to Empire Strikes Back. Where does it fall in terms of worst sequel versus best sequel?
So I've actually never seen any of the Star Wars movies.
Oh yeah, that was
my
other fact about you.
One.
Oh, which one?
Apparently what people call the worst one, where like
no,
of the original 6.
Oh,
the new ones of the one where he has the higher ground and then gets his legs chopped off.
That's the best of the prequels. At least that's I thought you were saying Attack of the Clones or Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace.
Oh god, at least you've seen the least shitty of the prequels.
You had me worried there for a second.
I was very scared.
All right. Back to the Sean Connery trivia session. So yeah, he picked Dragonheart over Jurassic Park, and then he decided to be in the movie The Avengers, not the Marvel one. This was a British TV show starring Uma Thurman and Ralph Fiennes.
Whoa!
Which movie series do you think that he gave up for that one?
Was it Lord of the Rings? I don't know.
Harry Potter.
I think Lord of the Rings.
Nope, it was he passed up being Morpheus in the Matrix movies.
Oh, but I think
that would have been a weird one.
I think Lawrence Fishburne is the right call on that, though. I don't. I think he would have been a good John Hammond, but I think I'm spacing on what's the actor's name who plays John Hammond. I think he was also well casted. I will say he did turn out some interesting roles, but I think they were fine without him. It wasn't like it was aching for Connery. Like it worked.
Yeah, seriously. And honestly, he kind of would have been kind of like a show stealer, because it's like, oh, it's Sean Connery, like everyone knows him. He was like the quintessential James Bond for like 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. So
like everyone knows him as like, oh, Bond, James Bond. Like whenever anyone does like a James Bond like impersonation, they always go Connery. They always go like shitty Scottish accent. It's like, I'll have my vodka martini shaken, not stirred.
Because he's the only one with like a specific type of like
inflection to his voice.
Like Daniel Craig just sounds British, and I mean I haven't seen Pierce Brosnan, but
those ones vary in like really entertaining to like weirdly goofy.
Okay.
It's a mix between like modern and like the campiness from like the 60s and 70s, where it's like I have a telephone shoe and a knife pen.
Okay. Okay. Resourceful.
Yeah. So back to Connery. This was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was his final movie in 2003. And the movie that he turned, I'm just going to tell you, the movie series that he turned down was playing Gandalf the Grey / White in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
First of all, okay, I knew Lord of the Rings was involved. Second, and third, God, I'm spacing on his name. Why am I spacing on his name?
Ian McKellen.
I knew it was Ian. Ian McKellen, I think, though, also was perfect in that. So again...
Yeah, no, I love Ian McKellen in Lord of the Rings. I love Lord of the Rings, so I'm glad that he got casted for it. But it was just
unfortunate.
The fact that Connery turned down something that was like sure to be a hit. It was like 3 guaranteed movies for a widely successful like book trilogy that everybody unanimously like adored because it was written so long ago and it's still held in high regards today. And it was all 3 films were going to be filmed like at the same time. A feat that has never been done before up until that point.
That's why I have the utmost respect for Peter Jackson, because
it was amazing.
He actually took into consideration the proper way to do it, as well as like there were scenes I know that he didn't want to put in, but he knew the audience wanted it, and so he ultimately did what the audience wanted. Like I just think that's great. Connor, are you a Lord of the Rings person?
No, I've never seen those ones either.
Ooh.
I hadn't until I watched them all with Kevin. And
yep.
what a whirlwind. Like
Okay. Yeah, no, it was also funny because I was also showing the Lord of the Rings trilogy to another friend who had never seen it. And for some reason, like you couldn't make it to when we first started watching it. So we got through all of Fellowship of the Ring. By the way, I have like the director's cut, so this is like the full extended movie. So we watched all of Fellowship of the Ring, and then we watched half of Two Towers, and then they had to leave and like go about life. And we were all watching this in one day, so that was like well over like 5 hours.
I just remember
of just watching a movie.
I just remember you saying, "I've seen Lord of the Rings, half of Lord of the Rings twice in 24 hours, and it's been the same half."
Yeah, and then the next day you came over and we watched all the way up until the same point. It's like, oh, if you watch it like all the way up until this point, then like we can all watch it together. And that didn't end up happening.
Until 6 months later.
Yeah, like 6 months later, we were able to finish it. And you were so confused.
I don't really know what happened in Two Towers. I just remember that there was not a sex scene between Frodo and Samwise, and I remember the potatoes. Like that's pretty much the only 2 things I remember from Two Towers.
The only takeaway is
Carl Urban.
Carl Urban and the unbridled bromance between Sam and Frodo.
There was just a scene where I honestly would have expected, if it was any other movie, I would have expected Frodo to pick up Samwise and carry him off to the master bedroom. That's how it like was looking. And I was like,
okay, you've been reading too much fan fiction, Sam.
No, I don't think I've read any fan fiction.
Okay.
But so let's get into the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Oh my god.
Yes. I was very disappointed reviewing this movie after I discovered that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was originally based off of a series of comic books that were written by Alan Moore, like the Alan Moore, which really kind of threw me for a loop because Alan Moore is credited as the creator of the comic book series Watchmen, which is like one of the which is like one of like you know about it. Like it's an insanely popular. It's like a really good comic book, and it made like a really good movie. Mm-hmm. It was just like it's regarded as like one of the best like comic books like
ever.
Interesting. And this movie was also directed by Stephen Norrington, who directed Blade with Wesley Snipes. So he had experience doing comic book movies. So that makes me wonder what the hell happened with this movie.
He also never directed again after this movie, but I don't think it was because of the end result. I think he said he just had a very hard time because it was so massive and there was too many. It was like really big crews and producer. It was more of just the process as opposed to the actual outcome, the end result of the movie.
Yeah, because after this movie, he never did any directing, but he does have special effects credits from The Exorcist in 2004 and Harbinger Down in 2015. But that's just special effects as mostly a sculptor. But yeah, this was his last directorial debut.
Pulled the old I didn't get fired, I quit after this movie.
Basically, yeah.
So Andrea, who is my sister, she had told me that you guys had watched this movie, and I literally was like, oh my god, we're about to watch that movie. That's going to be our next, what we're going to do for Movie Reel. And then I started watching it, and I called her. I was not even, first of all, this movie took me so long to watch because I had to keep stopping to make a note. Like, I had to keep, like, even, like, or I would go back because I was missing, like, and I was not even 11 minutes in, and I'm like, how am I going to do this? I can't. I don't want to, it's not good.
What do we talk about first? Is it the terrible plot, the super flat characters, like the weird way it was shot, like where I feel like scenes are missing?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the character development was non-existent.
I was about to say non-existent.
It was really it was just really disappointing because like this movie was basically like the first Avengers. It was a huge superhero team up of arguably like some of like the most popular and like well-known literary figures throughout history. Like we got Alan Quartermain, who I'm going to be honest, I did not know who this was before I saw this movie.
I've never heard of most of them. I mean, I know Tom Sawyer. Yeah. I've heard of Captain Nemo. I've never heard of Alan Quartermain. Dorian Gray, I might have. I don't know.
Yeah, the portrait or the picture. Oh god, it's like the painting of Dorian Gray is basically just a story of his painting gets old, but he doesn't, and if he ever looks at it, the curse is like broken, and he ages, and the painting goes back to normal.
Yeah, it sounded kind of familiar when I thought like there were enough hints. I'm like, I think I've heard of this. Maybe it was, but it's not. Stuff isn't very. It's definitely if you've read the. Not only if you've read the. It's a graphic novel. If you've read the graphic novel, but as well as if you just know these characters, and if you don't, you're screwed. Like there is more. So Avengers is all of these different superheroes coming together. But to be fair, they each have their own movie prior, but there is more character development in these already developed characters than there is in this movie where we have never met any of these characters and we will never see them again. This was supposed to set up for a sequel, and there is not. There wasn't one. Not, thank God.
Yeah, I doubt there ever will be because this movie got completely like decimated by critics and audience alike. I honestly can't. I'm not fully surprised, but it was also kind of disappointing when I saw their budget and their overall worldwide gross. So this movie had a budget of $78 million.
Oh,
yeah, that's all. Yeah, like I mean, it's estimated because like this was 2003, and there's been like some inflation since then. It in the U.S. it only made $66 million, with a worldwide gross of $179 million. Technically, it was a financial success worldwide. It was a financial failure in the U.S. So that was really the only thing it had going for it of whether or not they could make a sequel was they made a lot of money worldwide. But since it was like panned negatively throughout everything, this movie was basically slashed after that.
So this movie starts in 1899, which you are aware of because they keep giving us like a time card 3 times, and it's never relevant. I don't need to know. I think the only time I need to know is maybe the beginning. It keeps telling us June, July. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't see why I need to know this. I can just make a guess that time has passed. There's no, but anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. There's like text on a screen, which I've said before, whenever there's text on a screen, it's like a 50-50 chance it's going to be a shitty movie. There are plenty of movies where it's a good movie, and there's plenty that it's a bad movie. I was going to say,
like, with the exception of Star Wars, which I haven't really seen, I think it means the shitty movie. Like
Star Wars, and I think maybe Hunger Games. But, like, if it typically, I've seen enough movies to know when there's text on a screen, it's usually giving us information that either we don't need or we'll already be getting. And
it's also kind of funny because it's just the text on the screen is being read and narrated to us. It's like, what's the point of the text if it's just going to be told to us?
It wasn't
It just seems kind of.
Oh, what version? Mine wasn't narrated.
Yeah, mine. I guess.
Okay, I guess I saw a different version. But
that's all. I mean, I agree. That is stupid.
Yeah, it like in general, if like a movie does that, it's just annoying when it's like. Does this movie think the audience can't read? it's like it's there. Why do you need to tell us something that we can read for ourselves?
So it's
either tell us or let us read it.
I don't think this movie wants us to read. That's my conspiracy theory.
Oh,
I think I red pilled myself a little bit. I think this movie was made so bad on purpose about literary figures that if you're a kid and you see this movie and you're like, oh, it's about like books and stuff, maybe it'll be good, and then you see it and you're like, you know what? I guess books are stupid. I was right, and I'm just going to watch movies from now on. I guess I'll go watch Fast and Furious 8 or whatever.
In 2003, I'll go watch Fast and Furious 8. I'll never watch a movie until it comes out.
Yeah, take that, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and Pagemaster.
Well, so that's the thing. Like, Pagemaster does this job so much better.
Oh, absolutely. That is a great movie.
What is Pagemaster?
Pagemaster starring Christopher Lloyd
Macaulay
and
Culkin.
Macaulay Culkin.
Whoa,
thank you.
Whoa, what a weird combo.
Let's get into the start of this movie because like
the text on the screen is basically saying like for it's 1899 and for centuries all these nations are barely at peace and for centuries they've been using one shot rifles and all that's about to change. It's a new era and we're in London, England, I guess, and
yeah, it's somewhere in England, and
it looks like
a tank just breaks through a building, and these cops are like, "Stop!" Like that's gonna make it stop. He's just saying halt. Like, oh, he said halt. I better stop.
First of all, this movie just looks like a film set. It doesn't look like a city or it just looks like they just slapped together something, and it just took me out of it. I think it's because right away. I got so thrown because in the very beginning, at least, they kept hammering in the time frame. And for me, it didn't look like, in the very beginning, it didn't look like 1899 to me. But then again, I don't know. So yeah, there's a tank that rolls out. And I was laughing so hard. All of the cops are just banging their sticks against it.
Yeah, that was hilarious. They're like, they're
just taking their billy clubs like, oh, what up, you mate?
So, I guess it just ran over our friend, but if I hit it with this club, maybe it'll stop.
Yeah. Stop resisting!
Also, when that guy gets run over, it almost looks like it's a shot-for-shot remake of, like, when that guy gets run over in the Austin Powers movie.
Oh, but it's like, stop!
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
They're going like 2 miles an hour and he's like 50 feet away. It's like, stop! Like he's screaming like he's about to die. It's like, you have plenty of time to move. Like, you're fine, dude.
But yeah, this tank, they're like hitting it with the tank, like that's gonna stop it. And the tank drives into the Bank of England, and these military people come out. And I think it was because what threw me was their uniforms. I guess it could, it's 1899, but they looked almost identical to the uniforms that the German troops are wearing in the end of Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which is set in World War II. That's what threw me. Looked like...
Well, I mean, these guys are supposed to pretend to be German troops. I mean, it is weird that they're supposed to be... that it's World War I as opposed to World War II, but...
Which is I know that's a very weird... It threw me because it didn't... Again, I'm not as familiar with the uniforms of World War I, so I don't know. It just... there were just these tiny details that just... I didn't... It was the vibe. I just didn't believe it to be the time that they were hammering it in to be. So this guy steals papers of a building and they leave. And then it cuts to they're in another building in Berlin, and all these scientists are like, okay, so first of all, the bad guy, who later we will find is he named himself the Phantom, which is because let's just be as lazy as possible.
No, because it's supposed to be the Phantom of the Opera. He's got like half his face is all messed up, and he's wearing a mask, but it's wearing a mask that we can still see his messed up part.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it's literally the Phantom of the Opera. Prove me wrong.
First of all, it does not look a thing like the Phantom of the Opera, and the Phantom of the Opera wouldn't be going around Europe stealing weapons. If anything, he'd be like Ursula and stealing voices from women. Oh.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde isn't hulking around the middle of London, but it's a movie.
We'll get there. I don't
suspension of disbelief.
Okay, like
suspension of disbelief.
Go back for a second. Like,
yeah.
I understand. He's trying. He breaks into the bank, pretending to be German to like cause unrest between the countries. But like, why were the blueprints of Venice in a London bank?
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up too. That makes zero sense.
Was it in somebody's vault? That would have made a little more sense. Still no sense, but a little more sense.
Yeah, it's like some weirdly specific design plans from Leonardo da Vinci are in some safety deposit box in London that are about Venice. It's like, what? Why is this here?
And also, like, the amount of like explosives he uses, I don't think he needed any blueprints.
Oh yeah, it's like, dude, you have enough to just level like the entire Vatican, like the Vatican City. Like you're good. You don't need to sink the whole city. You can just blow it up.
He could have just gone to Venice and decided. The blueprints were kind of irrelevant. He could have just gone to Venice and made that decision. But anyway, so it's like next they're like infiltrating like some German air hangar thing.
That are making zeppelins.
And he's about to shoot up into a bunch of zeppelins, and one of the scientists is like, no, it's filled with hydrogen. And this is what really pissed me off. We're seeing the villain, like, because his just one eye is open, and we're seeing like all these scars kind of underneath, but the rest of his face is covered. We're seeing like pieces of him because they want to like build it up to what he looks like. And then he's shooting, and they should have just done a shot of the gun or him from the back or the bullet, arrow, whatever it was. But then they just show all of him. And I'm like, you're building it up, and then you just like stop building it, and I was like, it just was not cohesive, and it was just very like,
like you could have had like an awesome like Dr. Claw kind of moment. It's like, oh, get you next time, Gadget, and like you never see his face. You just see his menacing claw. Like you just see like kind of like a silhouette of him, or like what he sounds like, or just kind of like a close up of like his like messed up eye. But it's like, nope, you just see the whole thing, and he just looks like he just looks like he's wearing like a whatever clothes he had like left over in like his basement. It was just all loosely kind of like thrown together. It's like, oh, I'm wearing like my Cruella de Vil fur jacket and like my Spartan armor that doesn't fully fit me, because he's wearing like a chest plate that just kind of only goes to like the middle of his belly. It's like, what is that supposed to protect?
See, that's funny. We were mad about different things here, because I personally was mad that when he shoots that rocket at the balloons, for some reason there's like a rope on it, and I was just like, is this supposed to be like, I know what a rocket is. You can just show it hitting the balloon. I don't need this weird shot of like the rope coming out of the rocket holster attached to the rocket. It's just dumb.
I think it was supposed to like just illustrate just like kind of like old school like World War I technology that kind of looks modern, because like they didn't have rocket launchers back then. That wasn't a thing that they had. Like they had like mortars, but that was about it. But I think it was like, is this supposed to be like a modified like harpoon gun or something, and that's why there's a rope to it? It's just like that didn't bother me at all. It's just like, oh cool, just some like weird like fake steampunk era technology. Like that's what it looked like to
there
me.
was a scene later in the movie, I won't say what it is yet, but my dad was like, that's not possible. Like, in terms of physics, that's not possible. Like, Dad, none of this makes any sense. This is the least of this movie's worries. Like, all of these tiny these like tiny details, like, yeah, they take you out of it. They make you aware that this movie is even more flawed.
Yeah.
So we then are in Kenya, still 1899. We see this, obviously British Victorian guy get out of this, like, car. He then goes into this, like, bar, hotel. I actually, at first, thought it was like an old person's home because everyone in it was an old guy. And then I realized, no, this is just, like, it's kind of like the hangout in, like, The Mummy where they're all drinking,
Yeah, it's just a cantina. It's just a cantina with, like, a bunch of, like, old, like, English explorers, and
they all are dressed almost exactly the same. And the guy's like, "Where's Quatermain?" But he says it so, like, I thought he was a villain. The way he said it, he didn't sound at all like I don't know. The tone of voice did not match the character. But anyway.
Well, I mean, he does. I mean, later on, it is revealed that he is working for a bad guy, and therefore is a bad guy by extension.
Oh,
but, like, I mean, that's kind of
okay. But I mean,
that's kind of going in a bit further.
It just still didn't. I don't know. Anyway, I was just like, geez, like, okay. But anyway, it's like, where's Quatermain? The guy's like, he's in the back. He then goes to the back and sees this. He's like, are you Quatermain? The guy's like, yeah. And then he starts talking to him for a second.
You can clearly see Sean Connery behind him, just, like, reading his newspaper.
And then you see him, they're talking for a second, and then he's like, Quatermain, the British Empire needs you. And then Sean Connery turns around going, but do I need the British Empire? And then he's like, Nigel, go away.
It's like, sorry about him. I use him to keep the storygoers at bay. It's like, yes, because you clearly have so many fans.
I thought that's what I thought was, like, I'm like, you have a decoy? It just seemed very... Why?
Elaborate.
Yeah, like, unnecessary, and you could just say no.
Also, they look nothing alike. So it's like, if someone has seen it, it's like it made no sense as to, like, why this guy is his decoy. Like, they don't even have, like, the same facial hair. Like, this guy that's his decoy has just, like, huge pillowy white mutton chops, and, like, Sean Connery has, like, a full beard. It's like, this guy looks nothing like him.
And then the guy's like, I'm Sanderson Reed, and all of this crazy things are going on, and we need you to lead a team of unique men. And I'm like, okay, after seeing the whole movie, at the time I was like, this seems very random. Like, why Quatermain? And also, why not maybe have a meeting or something? Like, is this the protocol?
Yeah.
Like, like, it seemed very random. Why did you come up with this decision to go get Quatermain? And
I'm putting together a team. We call ourselves the Avengers.
And
it's like you see, like, Samuel Jackson with, like, an eye patch in the window. It's like, that was my idea.
Sanderson Reed beat you to it. And he's like, and Sean Connery is like, no, I don't want to do anything. Or actually, there's a part where the guy says, your stories have thrilled young boys for years. And I thought that was just a poor choice of words. At the time, I was like, what?
Yeah, it's like...
Oh, and then he said, oh, your stories. Like, yes. Oh, okay. But it was just the...
It's like, question, how is that relevant?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, so? Like, is that... You could say the same thing to J.K. Rowling. Like, that's not gonna really be useful.
I'm just picturing, like, an adventure movie. It's like, we need to get the world's greatest authors to help us out in this time of crisis. Quick, I need J.K. Rowling, Stephen King, J.R.R. Tolkien, and George R.R. Martin's like, sir, one of those people is
Bring
dead.
Him back!
Damn it, find a replacement.
So he then asks, he's like, where's your sense of patriotism? And he, like, literally stands up, goes, God save the Queen, and everyone just does it. And then suddenly this group of guys just come in. They go to, his name's Nigel, the decoy, and says, are you Quatermain? He's like, yeah, and they shoot him. And we get this whole fight scene, and it's hilarious, because Quatermain just springs into action. Like, he doesn't wait.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And he's also, like, very, like, kind of bored with it. Like, he's just like, Bruce, Matilda, and, like, the bartender just throws him, like, a shotgun, and just like, all right, let's do this.
So, yeah, and one of the guys is just stuck in a chair, one of the bad guys that just breaks in. And this other guy, Sean Connery takes a bottle of, I don't know, what was it? Was it vodka or tequila,
just alcohol,
and then he hits him with it, and he's like, "What a waste!" And there's a bunch of these in the beginning. There are a lot of these end zingers, and some of them I really like. I'll be honest, but some of them they just quickly cut. Like it doesn't. There's no time for it to settle, or just the way it's shot just doesn't work. But there's this whole elaborate fight scene, and there was one part I was laughing so hard, and my parents are asking me what was going on. Quartermain picks up a table, runs at a guy, and he's got this like expression on his face, like "Gah!" And I was laughing so hard because it was so stupid. And then he stabs him into like a tusk in the wall, and then
a rhino's horn. But it was also kind of weird because as he's doing that, the guy is like, his feet are firmly planted on the ground, but as they walk away, his feet are like a couple inches off the ground. It's like, when did he pick him up at the end? He just walked him straight back into it. It's like he did not have time to like lift him up or like do anything with him to like cause him to be off the ground. So it's like, why is this man suddenly
this
levitating?
Fight scene, it infuriated me because, like, first off, he is so bored and unfazed by it. Like, he takes a shot at the guys, and they're wearing like body armor, and the Reed guy's like, "By God, they're indestructible," and he's like, "No, it's just armored plating." And it's like, how would you know that? This doesn't exist. This is apparently brand new technology. Like, you should be a little wowed by it. And then again later, where the guy's like, "Oh, I guess they have automatic weapons."
Yeah, because they literally pull out machine guns, and everyone else is just using like just random like elephant guns to like fight them off.
I looked up the timeline on like automatic weapons. He should have been amazed. That should have been like magic to him, and he's just like, "Oh yes, automatic weapons." Like a word I guess I just invented in my head.
What bothered me more about him pointing out that no, it's just armor was it came off more like, oh, these guys, I battle these guys all the time. They've been hunting me down or something. Like he dealt with them before, which he had. Yeah, my bigger issue with this whole fight scene was, so I rewatched this scene. I watched the whole movie, and then it was like a couple hours later, I rewatched up to this part, and it's just so rushed, this whole movie. There's no time for development because everything's just so rushed. Like this scene in particular. Okay, so the scene between Sean Connery and Sanderson Reed, that, there wasn't much left to say. Okay, fine. But they could have had the bad guys, maybe they're already in there, or they come in and they're watching the conversation. It's just, there was no development. There was no reason for us to think there was going to be a fight scene. It was just, because they needed a call to action, and they just needed it way too quick. This is like the first 10 minutes of a movie. You can afford so a part of the hero's journey is the refusal. There's the call to action and then the refusal. Like, you don't want to participate. They could have, and they wanted, it was like the call, the refusal, and then the accepting all happened within 5 minutes. And that's just too quick and so painfully undeveloped.
Yeah, because literally, like, Sean Connery's like main reason is to not want to like help the British Empire. Is just like, it's like, Africa is my home. This is where I buried my son, my wife, and it's just like it's his home. He doesn't really care about England or like the Empire. It's just, as long as like the war doesn't come to Africa, he does not give a shit. And when these guys attack, it's like, well, the fight's already here. Might as well help him so it doesn't stay here for long.
So they leave the cantina. One of the guys got away, and he's so far away, and Connery shoots him. And it's almost the same as, like, I haven't seen it, but the gunslinger in the Dark Tower, who like can hit anything because like he fires with his heart or something. Like, it's,
oh my God, that's such a stupid line. I fire with my heart.
but it's the same. Like, he never misses, and he whatever. And so the guy, he didn't kill him. He kept him alive. People bring him in, and he takes like a poison pill, whatever, so he can't talk.
He pops some cyanide.
And then Cantina. Oh, so when they leave, there's a very obvious bomb. And how do they not see it? It wasn't, they walk past it. Like, it's not even that it's hidden. It's just set down underneath the counter. And the canteen explodes, and he's like, I guess I'm in, whatever. And it's just like, there's people inside. Like, and everyone else is running, and he's just like, yeah, he also doesn't seem at all fazed by his decoy's death. This longtime friend who's pretending to be him as, like, he
or, like, the bartender, or, like, all the patrons inside the bar that are still in there.
Quartermain, I know it's more because it's poorly written. He's not a very good protagonist. He does not change or grow or develop in any way. None of the characters do, but, like, he's our main character. He should. He just wasn't a very... It was more like he was automatically the leader. He automatically took charge. It was just very... I don't know. It was just really disappointing.
He decides to go, and when they get there, it's just like, oh, you made great time. Multiple times throughout this movie, they make random, I guess, like, inside jokes of, like, other, like, works of, like, literature. And this one he makes is like, he gets out of the car. It's like, oh, it's like, you made here in great times. Like, not as great as Phineas Fogg, around the world in 80 days. It's like, really? You needed to spell that one out for us?
Why didn't they leave together?
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I'm like, well, at first I'm like, July, wait, why didn't you just leave right away? And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, it probably took him time to get there, fine. But, yeah, why didn't they just leave together? The other guy was there first. Yeah.
Which, like, and maybe to take a pause for a minute, like, this plot makes no sense. Like, why they reached out to Quartermain at all. Because apparently he's the only guy who could stop them, wouldn't have joined in if they didn't fuck with Africa, and also has no magic powers to steal when we learn of the later double cross. So bananas that he's involved in this at all.
Yeah. The reason why I kind of figure that they have him join is because he's the only one capable of more or less tracking down and ultimately kind of recruit, like, getting close enough to the other people that would allow them to, like, steal their technology and, like, their powers, etc., like, with just like the random, like, goons and minions that they have that sent after Quartermain. Do you think they actually had a chance of like tracking down, like, Jekyll and Hyde or anything like that?
Yeah, I guess maybe.
The fact that they knew, but they already... So this actually goes into our next scene. Sanders and Reed takes him down into this hidden library where we meet M, who is played by... I have it written down. It's Richard Roxburgh, who... He is the Duke in Moulin Rouge. I thought he looked so familiar, and then I looked him up. I was like, oh, you.
Also, in this scene, he is explaining to, like, Quartermain's like, oh, yes, I want you to be the next member of our chapter of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And as he's just kind of, like, walking through, like, this room, you see on, like, the paintings, like, along the wall of, like previous, like, members of, like, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and at one point behind him it's the Wizard of Oz. Like, you see Dorothy, the Cowardly Lion, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man.
I didn't notice that at all.
It's like, yeah, it was just kind of like a blink and you miss it moment. And then there's, like, I think at one point you see, like, Red Riding Hood, like, other just random, like Grimm Fairy Tales characters just, like, on the back, because those are public domain. And it's just like, that's a fun little Easter egg. I actually kind of enjoyed that.
But and this is when we meet Captain Nemo, and we meet the... and there's a couple of scenes, there's a couple of times in this scene where... Actually, a couple times in this movie, the camera just holds for too long of a time. And it'll be like Captain Nemo says something, and then it just cuts to him, and it just holds on him. It's like, yeah, he's done talking. I don't need to keep seeing him. Or, like, an object. It just keeps doing this, and it happens so often, and I'm just like, I'm done watching this. I don't need to keep watching this random thing. It happened multiple times. And then we meet Skinner, who is the Invisible Man, and because he's invisible, he paints his face so people can see him.
Yeah.
And I will say, I did kind of like... I mean, it's not the worst. There is some really bad CGI in this movie. This is to be the better CGI. Is you see, like, he's painting his face, and you see, like, kind of this image of his head, but it's like covered, half is white and the back is just invisible. So I thought that looked cool.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of times where it was just very, very obvious. They just painted his face, and it's his regular. It just didn't. He looked too. I don't know. It did.
Invisible.
No, he didn't look too invisible. He looked too visible. Like the paint just looked like. I mean, I guess it was accurate. It was just very clear they painted his head white, and then that's it.
Yeah. But I mean, I'd rather take like that as an alternative to just having like a random floating CGI white, like pale face. Like I felt like it was like, okay, there's a reason why he looks like that. This is why. Sure. It's like it's a good reason, and it's a decent it's a reasonable amount of suspension of disbelief as to why he looks like a powdered donut.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we also meet Mina Harker. And
yes, the Bride of Dracula or something like that.
See, that's what I didn't. She kind of explained her story, and it still made no sense to me. I still felt so unclear on who she was. And she shows up, and Sean Connery is kind of an asshole to her. Like, I find women. He's like, I've buried 2 wives and several lovers. It's like, first of all, why are all of them dying? What's going on? But second,
it's like, yeah, he's basically just saying, it's like, women can't handle it in the fields. Like, you're nothing but a distraction.
Like, what the fuck is your problem?
Knowing Sean Connery, I thought he might have ad-libbed that.
Oh,
probably.
Really?
He's not a great dude.
Yeah.
He's. I mean, he's not like. I mean, yeah, he's kind of a. What's the word
old
of saying
school?
this?
He's been on the record being like, yeah, sometimes you hit women. Like,
what? Fuck you, Sean Connery.
Yeah, he has said that, and I think he was referring to his wife as well.
What the hell? Fuck you, Sean Connery.
He was from a very different time.
Ugh. Anyway, asshole. Anyway, they take Captain. So they have to get to Venice in 4 days, and that's impossible. And Captain Nemo's like, "You let me worry about that." Just Quartermain just seems so full of himself and so like, yeah, like why did they bring him in? Yeah, he was a terrible, like I said, he was a terrible protagonist. Like I feel like Tom Sawyer would have been a more interesting protagonist. I know, again, this is all because it's really poorly written. I haven't read the comic, so I can't judge that. But
I read like an intro comic of this like years ago, and like they are drastically different. Like if you've read the Watchmen comic and have seen the movie, like you know that those are very like tonally different, even though they do follow a very similar story. I don't remember how closely the comic story is in comparison to this movie, because apparently the comics are like it's a relatively long series. It's not just one large issue like Watchmen.
Yeah.
It's not just one graphic novel. It's a fairly lengthy comic series that
I am kind of interested in the series.
Goes.
It does.
Yeah, I think it goes through like different like members as well, like not just who we see in this movie.
It just
like I think Dr. Frankenstein shows up at one point.
He seemed, because to me he just seemed more like the so in the hero's journey there is the hero, there's the teacher, and he seemed more like that. He just didn't. It's not even that he was old, and he just was so full of himself and so like he just took control immediately, and it's like, why are you in charge? It just was really annoying and came off really pompous, and it was really frustrating. But anyway, Captain Nemo, they get in his car because he's like, I call it an automobile.
His automobile, which he takes like a full minute to say.
Automobile. His automobile.
And everyone's just like dope. Like no one even is like
whoa.
No one on the street blinks. Like everyone should be looking.
No, like there's several like people just like standing there. It's like, what is this contraption? Like there's several people just kind of like huddling. Like, the hell's this thing?
Oh, and infuriating again. He's like, this is my left-hand man or my right-hand man, and the guy's like, call me Ishmael, and you're like, shut the fuck up.
I was like, oh, come on.
Wait, what?
"Call me Ishmael" is like the first line in Moby Dick.
Oh boy. Oh god. Okay.
Yeah, it's literally the first line, and it's also like one of the like I think it's like the main character in Moby Dick. It's been a long time since I've read that.
See, they're making all these references, and this I feel like had the means to be so much better. It could have been a way better movie than it was. But they're also hammering in all of these references, and I don't know, what was this rated? Was it PG or PG-13? A lot of that
This movie was rated PG-13.
A lot of this age group might not all get these references.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, like I watched this movie like as a kid. Like I was maybe like 7, 8 years old when I first saw this movie, and most of what this movie was saying went completely over my head, because there was a lot of scenes of just them going to room talking about random nonsense. Like I wanted to see action.
Yeah.
Like it's like I'm a kid. I have a short attention span. This movie was not very entertaining in the parts where it's like something entertaining should be happening.
So they all get in the car. This is when Sean Connery tells Mina Harker, like, you're a woman and you're gonna be a distraction. And I'm like, fuck you. And she's even like, go away. Like, it was really whatever. And so they get to Dorian Gray's house, who
Yes.
lets them in, and he leads them to another library. It's almost identical to the one they were just in. So
yeah, it's like why couldn't he have come to them?
And why did this also have to take place? Because it does lead to another fight scene, and I kind of did like this fight scene, and I did like that it was in a library, but because they were just in a library, they just went from one location to the same it was stupid. But so prior to that, as they're driving, somebody's watching them. It's Tom Sawyer. Like, I mean, we all know it's Tom Sawyer, who's Shane West, who was in A Walk to Remember, more recently Nikita, which I didn't really watch. But anyway, so they're trying to convince Dorian Gray to join, and they're just kind of, he knows Mina. They have like some kind of a history, and Sean Connery says that he met Dorian Gray at a lecture in college, and Mina's like, "Oh, what, were you the guest speaker?" And he's like, "No, I was a student." And it's like, okay.
And it's like
Dorian Gray, because he's so much younger. It's like, okay, so he's immortal, or it doesn't age. He's okay, sure. And then suddenly, all of these people just come out. It's the Phantom, and I was like,
and like 20 of his men, like armed to the teeth with machine guns.
And he's like, "You guys are going to try to stop me. I can't allow that." It's like, yeah. And then one of the guys, Sean Connery sees. He looks somewhat different than the rest, and he winks at him. It's Tom Sawyer disguised as one of the guards, and then they all just start fighting.
Oh, but before that, like the Phantom's all like, pretty much just gives like the whole join the dark side speech of, hey, you guys can join me, and you guys will be like rich and powerful beyond your dreams. Like he pretty much just like, hey, you guys are all awesome. I'm pretty awesome. Let's be awesome together. Or you guys could be dead. Your choice.
And they obviously all decide to fight. And Sean Connery immediately takes the ladder, because there's like ladders on the ladder, and he like pushes it, and it like hits all these people, which I thought was cool. But it also just seemed like he just automatically did it. There was no like, what can I do? Like there was no moment of like hesitation on like thinking. I just didn't find that believable. And there is a scene, I did like this zinger. Somebody shoots Dorian Gray like a bunch, and then he opens his shirt. Or no, the guy ends up
like rips his shirt as after he gets stabbed.
And all of these bullet holes like just disappear. And he's like, "What are you?" And he's like, "I'm complicated." And I'm like, but they also, that was a good zinger. Unlike the previous Sean Connery ones where they just quickly cut and there was no time for it to be like, oh, huh. Like, I thought that was a solid zinger. And, this whole fight, and Tom Sawyer is chasing after the Phantom, and it, okay, and Mina Harker just disappears during this whole thing.
Yeah, she disappears, and then, like, later on, she just straight up just eats a guy who, like, tries to, like, hold her hostage.
So she shows up after the fight, and they're like, "Where's Mina?" And Sean Connery's like, "Oh, probably in trouble somewhere." And she comes out, and then an extra leftover soldier or whatever attacks her, and she's like, "Oh, you think I need protecting?" And then she just goes full, she's a vampire, and then like kills him. And I was like, okay, I like the reveal, but it made no sense to be after the fight. It should have been beginning or like during or the start. Like that's the trigger.
Yeah.
Because where was she? She just disappeared. That whole fight scene, she could have probably helped them out or caught. Can't say caught the Phantom, because despite that she's a vampire, she doesn't seem to possess any of the qualities that go. Like, don't you have speed and burn in the sun or anything like that? She just was like a person, but she's a vampire.
Yeah, no, she just drinks blood. That's literally it.
Like, oh god. And
also, so after this fight, I want to point out the fight's over, and they're talking to Dorian Gray. It's like, "Will you join us?" Like, "Sure, I'll join you." And as he's like walked up, his shirt's completely fine. Like all the bullet holes are gone. Like the rip that just happened. Like his shirt is in like pristine order. It's like, how did you do that? How like your suit didn't heal itself. It was just yourself.
Yeah, he wears the same. I mean, everybody's wearing the same thing the whole movie. Nobody seems to change their clothes.
Yeah.
So Dorian officially decides to. Well, I guess he already decided to join. I don't know. And then Tom Sawyer reveals himself, and he said he's Agent Sawyer of the American Secret Service, and because if a war breaks out, how long before America gets to America?
Yeah.
And then but. So Dorian's like, "No, we're full. We don't have any room." But M beforehand said, "You guys need to go recruit 2 people." So I'm like, "Okay, well, 1, 2. Like, you're done." And then they decide they got to go to Paris so they can go get.
Wait, you're missing like. They're like, "Sorry, Tom, you can't join." He's like, "I've got this cool gun," and then Corman's like, "He's in."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Was that the part where he shows him the gun and he's like, "I have another one if you want it," and he's like, "No," and then just
it's like, he's in.
Yeah, and then we just move on. We just continue on. They go to Paris to get Mr. Hyde, who's just the Hulk. Or in the beginning, it's like he can't.
It's literally the Hulk.
He can't control himself, and then at the end, he's just the Hulk. I'm like, first of all, Mr. Hyde is not. He's just a evil person. He's not the Hulk.
I mean, at least this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is better than Russell Crowe in The Mummy. It's way better than that.
Russell Crowe, Jekyll and Hyde in The Mummy was extra stupid because he introduced himself as Dr. Jekyll. He then is starting to transform, stabs himself with the antidote or whatever, and then just turns to normal. And Tom Cruise is watching all this, and then we just move right along. And I was like, are we just ignoring this? Are you going to ask any questions? Like, what was that? Like, yeah, this was just him being the Hulk, though, and it made no sense. But, okay, so they're chasing him, and they're trying to capture him, and Tom Sawyer's like, why do we need a giant monkey? And why did he think he was a monkey? None of it, I don't know. It's clearly a person with muscular arms and a hat.
I don't know. It was just a shit throwaway joke that really just does not deserve our attention.
They capture him. They bring him on board. We skipped Captain Nemo ship.
His submarine, the Nautilus, the Sword of the Ocean, which admittedly looks pretty awesome. It's this silvery gleaming, like super narrow, like submarine that actually looks like a Sword of the Ocean.
The design
like that
was definitely
that looks exactly like that looks like how it sounds.
The inside of it looked like the building that they're inside of in, I think it's Temple of Doom. I want to say, like the white and the arches on everything, and it was nicely designed. It was one of the better production design decisions in the movie. But yeah, they capture Mr. Hyde.
He slowly transforms into Dr. Jekyll. Is like, Dr. Jekyll at your service, and he's just like a stuttering like mess who's like the complete opposite of what he just was.
And then Quartermain's like, cool, great, awesome. And then they just head out. And one thing that made no sense to me was I guess there's like a deck or there's like an open outdoor space and everyone just hangs out on it. But whenever we would get like these long shots of it, I would never see where this deck was supposed to be. And I thought,
yeah, I always just kind of assumed like, is it just like an extendable like canopy for like the submarine, kind of like a periscope, like kind of like how a periscope in like a submarine can kind of be like extended and like brought back down. Like I just thought that was like, oh, is it just like a mechanism that just like brings that back up so people can like take a look outside?
Yeah, I thought that too. It was
never explained at all.
So they have 3 days to get to Venice now, and there's this happens a couple times. There's these weird dissolves to the next scene, but this dissolve from Captain Nemo saying like we have 3 days or we'll get there, whatever. It started way too early, and so he's still talking, and the dissolve it looked terrible. But anyway, I'm going to try to look at my notes. Oh my god! Okay, there were a couple of scenes. I don't know if you guys noticed. There were a couple of scenes in this movie where they're out on the deck, and behind them, it's clearly a green screen. Or actually, not even. It looks just like a backdrop. The water is not moving. It's like, there's one scene where behind Sean Connery, the water is moving, and there's a scene like Tom Sawyer. It just looks like a backdrop. Are you kidding me? You had the budget for it. It just, I like lost my mind. And my dad walked in the room and I'm like, it's not moving. Look, it's not moving. I couldn't get over it. This kind of like broke me. I've never seen that happen.
Yeah. And also while they're all in the sump, like seemingly like everyone is like flirting with Mina, like Tom Sawyer, Dorian Gray, and Dr. Jekyll is just kind of like watching her from afar and like having conversations with Mr. Hyde, like basically like reflections of like Mr. Hyde. It's like, oh, she wants me, not you. It's like, geez, like it's like and apparently she's like the only woman on the sub, and apparently like everyone wants her.
That was stupid. It was.
Yeah, it's like that. Like there's it's like, why is this needed? Do we need to have a romance in this?
Yeah.
No, it's like kinky. It's like
I more thought it was. It's like she clearly was more into Dorian because they had their history. But yeah, like Tom was kind of flirting with her and then just stopped. And then after later down the line, her and Jekyll seem to have something, and I'm like, what? This just popped out of nowhere. Yeah, they all just are. Other than Quartermain and Captain Nemo, they're all pining after her.
Yeah, like it just seems like everyone's just like flirting with her except for like Quartermain and Captain Nemo.
So there's a scene where Tom Sawyer is trying. Quartermain is trying to teach Tom Sawyer to shoot. And yeah. I mean, the only reason it's there. He has the cool gun, but obviously Quartermain has the better skills. And the only reason this comes up is because at the very end, Tom successfully shoots someone from far away. Like it's yes. Not a there. It's just I don't know. It wasn't an important. That was the only reason it's there. Like it didn't really add anything other than him mentioning. Oh, so Quartermain reveals why he hates the British Empire, and it's because he was on a mission and his son died. And
yeah. He basically just has like survivor's guilt that his son died instead of him for the British Empire, which is something that he just doesn't care about anymore. And he sees a lot of similarities between his son and Tom Sawyer, and that's why he's like teaching him. He's like, this is how you shoot like a real man, not your American way of shooting. Just fire it up with a bunch of bullets and hope one of them hits.
The best line from this was like he's teaching him, and then, or I guess it's the end of the scene, and Tom Sawyer's just like completely like forgets that, I don't know what, or I guess he forgets what Quartermain just said about his son. He's like, so did you teach your dead son how to shoot like this? And then the guy just walks away.
It's like, oh. I mean, I don't think he said dead, but I mean, he basically used like the same amount of text. Like, do you teach your son how to shoot like this? Like, oh, you little asshole. And he leaves.
They were trying to do the whole, he sees Tom Sawyer reminds him of his son, whatever, and it's there. Like, it's clear that that's what they're trying to do, but it doesn't. Again, if everything's so underdeveloped that it's, again, like everything else, it's not very important. So during this time, there's evidence that someone's like sabotaging
and like stealing all this stuff.
There was this like dust that Captain Nemo finds, and then they see like a book fall over, so they all think it's Skinner. And I gotta say, right when I saw the dust, my first thought was Dorian, because it looked exactly the same dust as when the bullets just disappear from his body. So he was my first. I'm like, oh well, it's probably not Skinner.
Yeah.
And then what was going on? Quartermain is in his room, and he has to kick Skinner out. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know what that was about. I guess he was just spying on people for no reason. That's never explained again in this movie. He's just randomly in Quartermain's room in the middle of the night, and just Quartermain just turns out the lights so they're both blind, so no one can see each other, and just kicks him out of his room. It's like, Skinner, if you're gonna be in my room, wear some pants, and just throws him out, because Skinner's only invisible when he's completely naked. Like, if he wears his clothes, like, you can see the clothes, but nothing else.
And there is a scene where Mina and Archie, really quickly, so Quartermain leaves his room, obviously, and we see Captain Nemo, and he's like worshipping some statue, and Mina says it's the god of death. She's like, do we trust someone who worships death? And then Captain Nemo like sees them watching, he closes the doors, it never comes up again. And it's useless.
Yeah.
And because Mina is in her room doing science, and like she does her Sean Connery impression, which I thought was not that bad. I was like, I'll give it to you. But Dorian comes in and he starts saying, "Oh yeah, my portrait like ages and I don't," and yeah, and then they like have a drink and they make out, and Jekyll is just watching, and then he's running away. And he's been having arguments with Mr. Hyde, like he's like in a mirror and a reflection, and it was like he was heartbroken, and I'm like, why? There was no indication that he was into Mina up until this point. It was so random.
Yeah, he's just kind of been like more or less kind of like a peeping Tom, just kind of like watching from a door. Who's like, maybe she'll notice me. Oh shit, she looked. Gotta go, run.
And then Captain Nemo is really worried that he's not in control. He's like, no, I am in control. And he's like, no, you're clearly not. And what, did he go to take the elixir and it's gone? I was getting so mixed up by this point. And then around this time, this is when Jekyll, they figure out, so Nemo, it's revealed what the Phantom's plan is. He basically wants to level Venice and like destroy the city. And then Jekyll says, oh, Skinner took my elixir. And I don't know. I was getting just so confused on what was happening that I just was like, whatever. I just kept going. They arrive in Venice and there's like a masquerade going on.
Also, I want to point out, during this masquerade, like, everyone is seen wearing like very bright, like different colors. Everything, like every color palette in like this like entire scene, including like the fireworks of what everyone was wearing, is completely muted and looks like it's like filmed in black and white, even though you can tell they're wearing different colors. Like, the fireworks have no color and are super like diluted to the point where they're just a dull flicker. And just like, why would you do this? Like, what was the point of muting all the colors for this like very vibrant, clearly vibrant party? I just thought that was really annoying and weird. It's just like, why is there no color to this firework? And also, why is that like clearly bright red like mask that man is wearing like very like like muted? Like it was very noticeable that like someone just messed with like the color palette of this scene for some reason that was never explained.
So they get to Venice and they think they basically see all the bombs are underneath the city. And what was the plan? They were driving around in the car and they know how to drive.
Oh yeah, so that was the best. The buildings start blowing up and they're like, oh, the buildings are dominoing each other, which like, based on the amount of explosives, I don't think that's what would have happened. But then Tom Sawyer finds a car, a device he's never seen before, and is like,
no, not a car, an automobile.
And just starts driving it expertly. He would like,
yeah,
and then they're like, you're gonna track the car. We're gonna put it in a building, and you're gonna blow up a building before they can domino each other. Which, like,
yes,
why?
Because if we blow up a building before it gets blown up, we'll stop the explosions. That makes no sense.
Good.
If we explode the explosion before it explodes, it'll stop the explosions. That's their logic for this scene.
Okay, good. It wasn't me. I didn't understand it. It made no sense. I was like, "What? Why are they driving around?" So as they're driving around, this is when we see. So Jekyll doesn't go with them. He still doesn't want to take the elixir and turn into Mr. Hyde. Mina ditches them, and we, using a bunch of bats to attack people. And then Dorian jumps out of the car and is just, I don't know. We don't really see him doing anything. I think he has a sword.
Yeah, he just like pulls out his cannon and just starts fighting some like random henchmen. And it's like, they're not going to be able to follow you guys, so there's no point in you sticking around fighting them. So you literally just like, nah, I'm going to go do something.
And then Quartermain leaves Tom, and he goes after the Phantom, and he chases them, and then the mask falls off. Who is M, guys?
Professor James Moriarty.
Well, that doesn't come later, but wait.
Yeah, I know.
Fuck. I spoiled it. Who's the Phantom? I said it backwards. I was supposed to say who's the Phantom and reveal that it's M.
Yeah, it's Moriarty.
The Phantom is, I said it backwards. The Phantom is M and M is Moriarty, which we find out a little bit later. But when we find out it's Moriarty, I literally went, oh my god. Like, of course it is, And what bothered me more about, first of all, two things. One, so M is the bad guy. Why did he even bother? He went to just such lengths he recruited these people to stop. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah, his plan made no sense.
So the idea is he wants to steal their powers, so he needs their formulas, their DNA, whatever. But it's like, I don't know, dude. You could have just sold cool weapons, like
Syndrome it.
You didn't need all of these,
Yeah, because towards the end of the movie, like his plans are, it's like, oh, I'm going to steal the plans for Nemo's submarine and just make an entire fleet of like the Nautilus. I'm going to steal Dr. Jekyll's formula, so I'll have an army of that. I'm going to steal Skinner's skin, so some of his skin, so I can make an invisible like soldiers, and I'm going to steal Mina's blood, so I can have an army of vampires. So it's like I'm going to sell like all these to like the highest bidder throughout the war and just come out on top in this greatest of world wars.
Yeah, it was so confusing. It was way too elaborate, and it didn't make a bunch of sense. And what I thought was even stupider, though, so his mask falls off, and he's wearing like a fake layer of like gross scarred looking skin. It's like, why bother?
It's like, why? Because like no one's gonna be able to see that, and two, it doesn't even like conceal your identity. So what was the point of that?
If his eye was covered, he looked kind of like Victor Von Doom in his disguise.
A little bit, yeah.
I was thinking he had looked familiar, and I forgot who he had looked like. But yeah, it was so stupid. And then he reveals that there's a spy, which is like, yeah, we know there's a spy. And then Dorian shows up on the boat, and with Nemo's second in command, and he says something about Skinner, and he's like, oh, it's not Skinner, it's me, and then shoots him. And then they all reconvene, and the guy, I thought he's not dead, he was alive just long enough to let them all know that Dorian is the spy.
Yes.
And there was just no, I was like, did he not check? And then this is the part, he escapes in like a pod or whatever, and this is when my dad said that would never work, and I'm like, none of this works. That's the least of this movie's worries. And they get back on the ship, and this is, it just, every time, the movie just kept taking turns to be stupider. Like, they it was a recording of M explaining his entire plan, yet they were showing it to us like it was black and white, because they probably didn't want to just show us having them listen to it. Which,
for some reason, he left them like an audio recording, like basically like a record, and they were playing that, and that somehow like projected a black and white movie screen picture, like video of basically like matching like the audio. Like basically it was like an old talkie, even though that wasn't a thing yet.
But it didn't make sense for. That's what I just didn't get. I'm like, is this an audio recording or is this a movie? And if this is a recording, are they doing them, or is this only a movie and this is just for the audience's benefit because they know that it's not fun to watch people listen to. They don't want us to watch people listening to something, which they just should have done because the other thing just didn't make any sense. Visually it looked good, but there was no reason for it. It was just so random. And this is when he realized there's all these bombs all over the ship. And I did like this shot because it then like was speeding through the ship to reveal the bombs. But that should have been a really intense scene. So the fact that, and I should have felt intense, I felt stressed out or anything, but no, I really couldn't have cared less. It was.
Yeah. Oh, and then after this whole thing is done, it's like, oh, by the way, I've left like this. During this message, there has been a subtle signal that can only be heard by dogs, and apparently Mr. Hyde can hear it because he's just like writhing in pain in like the mirror, and only Dr. Jekyll can see it. And it's like, and as soon as this thing is over, it'll set off these bombs, and then Dorian Gray is just all like, "Bomb voyage," and then just all these bombs blow up in the Nautilus. Like that is the worst line that you could have said there.
Oh God.
It's like, oh, the bombs are about to go off. Oh, crap, I need to think of something cool to say. Bomb voyage. Was that good? Was that good? I don't think it was good. We don't have time to do another take. Damn it. All right, I guess we'll stick with that.
So then we are literally getting a scene of the boat starting to kind of sink, and then Jekyll decides to Hulk and opens something, and everything's better, and they're healing everybody. Mina and Jekyll are healing everybody, and this is when they have kind of a moment where you think, why is it was kind of like they had this moment of us trying to convince them that there's something between them, and again never comes back, and and they end up finding out that I don't know where are they going. It's somewhere in the snow. I don't know. This is like getting to this is the climax of the movie.
I don't know. So yeah, somewhere north, I'm assuming.
And they all have. Oh, I mean, this made more sense to me. They all are wearing like snow, like jack coats and stuff. But I thought it was funny because it reminded me of in the DreamWorks version of Sinbad, where they're in a cold place and they all suddenly have warm clothes. And it made less sense to me that the woman had all these. Had her like when did she just brought her warm clothes with her? Okay, sure, but like this made more sense because like they're all the same, so it's clearly Captain Nemo's just stash of it, and they're all hiding out in a cave, and then a white tiger shows up, and then leaves, and then Skinner appears.
Yeah, Skinner shows up, but the funny thing about Skinner is that for him to be invisible and scout out the area, he has to be completely naked in this barren, frozen wasteland. And as he shows up, it's like, oh, do you mind if I come inside? This weather's quite nasty on my nether regions.
And he pinches. So he reveals himself by pinching or grabbing Mina's butt, and then she slaps him, and I'm like, cool.
It's like, ooh, cheeky. It's like. There are times where like Skinner just like straight up just has like Austin Powers vibes to him,
and I appreciate when Mina slapped him. I'm like, yeah, because you can't slap Sean Connery other than he vocally being an asshole. He hasn't done anything as Quartermain, but they end up. I don't know. They have a plan. They're gonna help people escape and. People are building stuff. I don't know. I didn't know what was going on anymore. I was feeling so lost. And
it's basically revealed as like, oh yeah, this is M's weapons factory. He's building like a fleet of Nautiluses or Nautili. He's making these like these full on like metal armors that are basically just like the Hydra flamethrower guys in the first Captain America movie, where they just have like the dual wheel flamethrowers and they're just wearing like full metal armor.
And so they all split up, and Mina goes after. So Skinner and Jekyll, I think, are reveal or Hyde are letting. I guess there's people that are trapped and they're letting them go. And Mina goes after Dorian, and they have this fight scene because they're both immortal. So it's anyway. And
yeah, the fight is extremely exaggerated, and he stabs her, clearly not in her heart, and thinks he's killed her.
And then she,
I don't know why he would think that, because he's like stabs her like right in like underneath the middle of her sternum, and it's like, yep, that's where her heart is. I win. Don't need a double check or double tap that.
So
it's like, what? No.
Dorian, and he says, "I thought it would nail you one more time. I just didn't think it would be literally." And I'm like, what? What?
Yeah, why not?
Damn. And I was really worried because I thought he was, for a second, I was worried he was going to rape her or something when he said that. I'm like, what? And then it just cut, and I was like, okay, good. You're just a murderer. You think you're a bad murderer. Clearly, because he failed at killing that other guy, too. But then, so he did this whole thing because he wanted his picture back.
Yeah, his basically M somehow managed to get his painting, which is the only thing that can kill Dorian Gray is if he looks at it. So it's like he somehow lost possession of it. It's never explained how, or how M even got it in the first place, and he now has like his painting like covered with like a thing like a shawl over it. Yeah. Also, like, but the funny thing is that I realized, like, how would he verify that that is his painting unless he looks at it? Because for all he knows, that M just gave him like a shit like fake painting and said like, "Oh yeah, this is your painting." Dorian Gray has no way of verifying that unless he looks at it, thus breaking the curse and killing him. So there's no way that he could have like actually known that he actually got what he wanted to get out of this deal.
So Mina is not dead and shows him the portrait, and he dies. And I'm like, okay, yeah. Cool, moving on. We then, so Quartermaine and Tom Sawyer are after M, and M is just, he's getting a shaving.
Yeah, he's just shaving in the middle of this.
What I thought was weirder was not even the shaving; it's that he's shaving his mustache, which it just seemed, for the movie, it made no sense. He had a mustache and then he didn't, and it's like, something about it just seemed weird to me. It's like, you're gonna make the decision to get rid of your mustache now. Why not before? Why did you ever have it? And they start this whole weird. It's hilarious. There's this chase scene between Quartermaine and Tom Sawyer and M, and it's just M's running, Tom Sawyer and Quartermaine are running, M's running. It just keeps cutting back and forth. I'm like, yes, we get it. They're running. Like, it goes on forever. And then they get separated, and Tom is literally fighting another invisible guy with a knife.
And he thinks it's Skinner at first, like, oh, it's okay, Quartermaine, you go after M. I ran into Skinner, because they sent Skinner earlier in the head to plant all these bombs to blow up the entire factory, while Hyde and Nemo and like all of Nemo's like men, like all, apparently he only has like 8 soldiers on his entire sub to free all the prisoners, like all the scientists and their families.
And the scene is ridiculous. And then it gets to like, it becomes like it's like a firefight. He's in a room that's on fire, and then Skinner saves him, and he's on fire. It's just, and he looks totally fine. There's that scene before when he drives the car into the building, and he shows up later. He has no scratch, he's not even covered in like soot or anything. They all just emerge just as perfect. And
but yeah, this does kind of lead into like my favorite like scenes in the movie is when is with Jekyll and or Hyde and Nemo, is like, oh, Nemo turns to Mr. Hyde and is like, oh, we have trouble. It's like, you call it trouble, I call it sport. It's like, that's actually a pretty solid line for this movie. And they come across the craziest henchman that M has employed, who's just like has a machine gun and he's just laughing maniacally as he's just firing it. It's like, he is by far like the best part of this movie.
That guy had so much like character to him. I'm like, was he introduced earlier and I missed it? Like,
Yeah,
because he's obviously a bad guy, and I'm like, but they're just using him for like these 5 minutes at the end of the movie.
I think every time this guy, he's always just like, is this the guy that every single time he has a gun, he's like, ah ha ha!
Yeah, as far as I know, he only shows up in like during the climax is when he's like firing at all of Nemo's men and not dying, even though he's taking zero cover and just mowing everyone down. And when he drinks like all of like Hyde's potion and just really hams it up and just turns into like Mega Hulk.
He looks like, I wrote it down, so yeah, he drinks the elixir. He looks like the Hulk plus Jafar as Genie, and for a second,
Hulk and Jafar.
Yeah, like when he's like red, and also at a glance when he first turns, it's like it looked like he had black like veins almost. So I wrote Darth Maul Inside Out. It looked just like a combination of all these weird villains, and they have this fight scene. And Hyde is the one that points out, like, and also, there's a part, though, one of his arms is skinnier than the other. And it looked like SpongeBob when he has, like, the blow-up muscles and one's deflating.
I think it's like that because he, like, downed the potion and, like, a bunch of it spilled on more on one arm than on the other. And that's why one of his arms is, like, half the size of his body and the other one's, like, proportional size to his body.
Spilled? Like, it just needs to spill?
Yeah. He basically like drank a bunch of it and then he just kind of like poured it like all over his body and it just a lot got on to like the arm that just turned giant. And I just assume that's why.
And okay, I don't think I noticed that, but yeah, he looks weird. The CGI is hilarious for him, and this is kind of, we're starting to get to the end of it, and then Quartermain. It's like Quartermain versus M, and he at the last second gets stabbed, and then Tom Sawyer shows up. M's disappearing. He's running away, kind of like that guy did in the beginning of the movie. And Quartermain's like, shoot him. He's too far away. He's like, no, you're ready. And he shoots him, and then Quartermain dies. And I was like, well, whatever. I will say though,
and they blow up the factory.
When he does get stabbed, I was like, oh no! Like, I did gasp because I wasn't expecting him to die. And then it cuts to, they're in Africa for his funeral. Oh, he says at the beginning of the movie when he first gets recruited that he got blessed by a witch doctor who said, Africa will never let you die. And I think it was like Dorian or someone said, but you're not in Africa now. And he's like, no.
So also, they're at the funeral, and like Skinner's just fine now. Like, his entire body was like scarred from fire. But he's cool now. So
yeah, I guess this takes place like several months later because we haven't gotten a timestamp.
But they all look dressed. They're all dressed in the same stuff. Like Tom Sawyer is in the exact same clothes he was just in.
Alternate costumes don't exist in the 1899s.
And Captain Nemo basically says, you're all welcome to keep traveling with me on my boat. And Tom Sawyer puts the rifle on Quartermain's grave. They all walk away. There's like a witch doctor doing something, and clouds are showing up, and the gun's starting to shake, and then cut, it's the end of the movie. It very abruptly ends. And I was like, what? Oh, okay. Whatever. Ugh, that is the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I will say this: it was not a good movie, but I can definitely understand, Kevin, if you saw this as a kid, that I can understand a young kid liking this.
Yeah, like watching this as like a 7 or 8 year old, especially like the final fight between like Hyde and like Mega Hyde's like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever, and they're fighting Invisible Man, and there's vampires, and they're fighting a flamethrower guy. It's like this is the coolest thing ever. Like that, just like this blew my mind as a kid.
Yeah, I had never seen this movie. I think I know I had heard of it. I don't know. We didn't. I think one of the reasons I knew this movie existed, and prior to doing this, my sister sent me. It was a Family Guy clip when they're at Quahog Six Flags, and they're like, "We're about to go on the best roller coaster in Quahog, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the ride," and and they're all like, "Yeah, the movie. It had a guy with an umbrella and a guy who wore a mask, and the guy with the umbrella opened it at one point, which I don't remember an umbrella. But anyway, I asked my sister after she watched it, like, was there a guy with an umbrella? And oh, it wasn't overly long. Those were the points about the movie.
Yeah, this movie was an hour and 50 minutes, which honestly wasn't, like, it goes by pretty quickly. Like, there's stuff in there to, like, keep you occupied, even though there's a lot of scenes of just them just talking and really no, like, major, like, character growth happens besides that. The only real character growth is, like, the kind of, like, father-son dynamic between Quartermain and Tom Sawyer. That's really the only, like, main character dynamic
Tom
in this movie.
Sawyer and I guess Jekyll, maybe. That's about it. There were the two biggest issues were the plot. The story was really very poorly written, which was established, and there was just no character development. I cared about these characters, but barely, and just all these decisions on, like, traits and all these things just never went anywhere. It was just not. This was like a first draft. This was definitely not a should be in theaters yet draft. It wasn't good. But I remember a couple years ago, you had said to me, have you seen The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen? I said no, and you went, oh, it's a gem. It's a gem.
It is. It's a gem, because it's like there's some good parts in it, even though, like, this movie mostly is kind of
But once
crap.
You said that, I was like, okay, I need to watch this. And I remember when I was uploading Into the Spider-Verse, and I almost wrote that John Mulaney and Nick Cage are gems, and I no, I gotta save gem for when we do League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Because, like, I don't know how else to describe it to someone who's never seen it and is also a fan of bad movies. Like, you'll get a kick out of this. This is a gem.
So, overall rating, Connor, how would you rate this movie on like a scale of 1 to 10?
Am I allowed to say -3? I mean, movies like this are, like, infuriating.
So wait, there was no redeeming qualities for this movie for you?
It's not even like I was just mad the whole time. Like, why did this get made? Like, who? Like, because they couldn't have done rewrites or, like, whatever. Like, it was so bad.
I mean, I guess that's fair.
What was that?
What?
What was that?
Oh, that was Siri on my phone.
Okay,
Siri wanted to give her opinion about this movie too, apparently. Yeah, no, it just... Yeah, no, I agree, like, this movie is not the greatest, but I mean, it is by far not the worst, especially for, like, Sean Connery's, like, filmography. But it is just kind of unfortunate that this is, like, the movie that he ended on. Especially after such a very, like, pretty successful film career, especially, like, from, like, Darby O'Gill and the Little People to James Bond to Hunt for Red October. Like, he was, like, like, actor that, like, everyone knew for, like, decades.
I didn't understand when I was first started watching SNL. I didn't understand that in Jeopardy, the guy that was playing Sean Connery and the guy that was playing Burt Reynolds were not actually Sean Connery and Burt Reynolds. I didn't think I understood. I definitely thought that was the real Burt Reynolds. I think I was pretty sure that was the real Sean Connery. I don't think I understood. I don't think I knew Sean Connery well enough, and I didn't understand the point of SNL yet at the time. This is not like last week. Just let me stress that up.
Yeah, this was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So, okay, a -3. I just love how it's not -200, not something ridiculous. No, it's you thought a lot about this. It is -3 out of 10.
Yeah, honestly, I'd probably give this movie like a 4 out of 10. It's not the worst. I mean, there's a few moments in this, like, the action's pretty decent, the sets are pretty cool. CGI isn't the worst, especially for 2003 standards. So overall, this movie doesn't hold up, but it is entertaining enough to give it a watch.
I feel like it's a good kind of dumb movie to, like, you're hanging out with friends and you want to kind of laugh at some stuff. I mean, it's not like laugh out loud bad, but there are some scenes that I was laughing at. So it's not I would say it's a decent crappy movie.
Yeah, like a 3.5 out of 4. I'm trying to guess, like, what you're gonna rate it.
I'm 2.5, maybe.
Okay.
2.5 out of 10. I just think I think what makes, I said this before, what just pained me so much, first, it was just so rushed and everything. It was like they were just trying to get to the action and get to the adventure when, no, you need to develop it and it'll make all of those things stronger. There was the character development was so poor and non-existent, and actually, no, it was not poor, it was non-existent, but the plot, again, I think this could have been a lot better, and it was just so sloppily written. I don't know. I feel like, yeah, I'm saying 2.5 now. I feel like 4 is kind of high. Like, so, like, I gave Space Jam like a 4. So yeah. This is lower than Space Jam.
Damn, that's saying something.
I actually, there's another podcast that I listen to sometimes, and where they talk about bad movies, and they talked about Space Jam, and it was a live show, and everyone was just booing them the whole time because they all hated it, and Space Jam is like a treasure for several people. But anyway, this is a really bad movie. We need to do a good movie next week.
Yeah, we need to do a good movie after doing this and Space Jam, which, if you haven't listened to our Space Jam episode, give it a listen. It is easily our funniest and by far our best episode so far.
I think, to me, that the movie Hook was a better movie, but I feel like this is a little bit closer to Hook in terms of there were things that were introduced that weren't
fleshed out.
You don't see fleshed out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was a little more closer to that. But Hook was, I think, I didn't see let me see what the score was for League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
On IMDb, it is 5.8 out of 10.
See, IMDb is weird because it's rated out of 10. So certain scores seem higher or lower than you would guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Oh! It got a 17. That's so low.
Oh yeah,
and a 44 from audiences.
Yeah, and they have a Metascore of from Metacritic of 30.
Oh boy, yeah.
Yeah, oh boy. This movie is not for everyone.
So we got a little bit of time, so I thought, are you guys watching anything? What are you guys watching to pass the time during quarantine?
I actually just watched this with my family the other day. The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the Netflix original Western that has Liam Neeson, James Franco.
James Franco's in that?
Yeah, James Franco. Like there's a lot of actors in this, and it's just a bunch of like short stories that take place in, like, you know, the Wild West, like Westward Expansion, Manifest Destiny. And it starts off with like this really funny one of Buster Scruggs, who's like this, you know, this gunslinger, but he's like very like morally, I don't know, like he thinks that he's the good guy, but he's doing like all these messed up things, but he's doing it in like a somewhat pleasant way. And it's pretty funny, and then it kind of steers into like, oh, these are like really sad and really like kind of depressing, but the stories themselves are really well done. They're really like fleshed out. My favorite one is I think it's called like The Girl with the Rattles, and it's basically the Oregon Trail, and this lady's and her brother are traveling along. Her brother dies, and he accidentally gets buried with all the money that they had, so she can't pay her stagecoach hand to like help run the wagon from where they are to Oregon. So she has to try to figure out a way to like keep her caravan moving along with everyone else and not get left behind and ultimately die. It's really well done. I'm making it seem like way more depressing than it actually is, but it's definitely worth the watch. I would recommend it.
I just know the actor Tim Blake Nelson because my sister and I just refer to him as Jonathan Jacobo because that's who he was in the second live-action Scooby-Doo movie.
Oh my gosh.
That's all we know him as. So every time I see him, I'm like, oh, it's Jonathan Jacobo. Anyway, Connor, what, or other than League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, are you watching anything?
Yeah, I actually started a new Netflix series last night. It was very interesting. It's called The Midnight Gospel.
Oh yeah, that just came out like the other day, right?
Yeah. I watched the first two episodes last night. So it's animated by Pendleton Ward and it's voiced by comedian Duncan Trussell. If you
Okay.
know him, he's a pretty famous comedian. And it's real. I mean, it's weird. I don't know if I'll watch the whole thing, but I recommend it as a try to anyone because it's so trippy and bizarre. So it's this
animated.
guy. Yeah, it's a cartoon, but this guy owns a forbidden multiverse simulator, and he travels to worlds about to have their own apocalypses and interviews them for his space podcast. And it's weird because it's really bizarre. It's actually like an interview he does with real people, but then it's like animated to this like weird backdrop. So like the first one is like he goes to this planet having a zombie apocalypse and he has a podcast with the president about drug laws. And it's like weird.
Yeah,
but
I remember seeing the trailer for this and it's like it just looked like a fever dream in a fever dream. It looked so trippy and like a full on like peyote acid trip. It was just like I didn't know quite what to make of it just based off of the trailers.
Yeah, it was really bizarre, but I definitely give it a recommend to try to anyone who's looking for something to watch.
Yeah. I forgot that was like coming out until I saw like when I was on like Netflix the other night. Sam, what have you been watching or what do you got to recommend to the people?
So I've been working a little bit, so I've been trying not to watch. I've been just doing like normal watching just reruns as background noise. But actually, I finished. So yesterday, I already started watching it, and I was continuing it. So BuzzFeed. I've mentioned them before. BuzzFeed does a couple of originals, and there's one that I really love called BuzzFeed Unsolved. It's true crime. They do one for supernatural stuff, which I won't watch because that'll just creep me out. But the true crime one I started watching this year, and season 6 it's not available on Hulu, but it's available on Amazon. And I don't know, I was never thought of myself as that hardcore into true crime, but it's super interesting and it's really creepy. And I definitely would recommend don't watch it alone at night right before you go to bed because you will regret it forever.
Ooh, spooky.
It's because sometime at 2 or 3 in the morning, the New Orleans axe murder is creepy, but at 2 in the afternoon, you're like, you. But
killers can't hurt me in the daytime.
But and actually, after I watched League of Extraordinary Gentlemen last night, my dad and I started watching Six Underground, the Netflix original. It stars Ryan Reynolds. It's an interesting cast. Stars Ryan Reynolds, and it's Michael Bay, which I didn't know until the credits rolled, and I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. It's really fun. It's really entertaining. It's definitely catered to men, which my dad never laughed. My dad was like, oh my, because the amount of parkour and fight scenes, as well as there's these 2 sex scenes, and one of them there's just no reason for. There's really no reason for it, and we were like, what? Why is this happening? But it's really fun. It's about these people who basically fake their death, and then they're trying to essentially make the world a better place. And so it's setting it up for it to be kind of a series because their first guy that they're trying to take down is like a dictator in a made up Middle Eastern country. It's really fun. My only thing about it was like it's a Michael Bay movie, so there wasn't as much character development as there should have been. It's kind of like more on the explosions and that stuff than
absolutely.
But I mean, it is a fun movie. It's kind of Ryan Reynolds' character is like a billionaire. Think of Deadpool if he wasn't Deadpool. Just like a person who has $1 million and is fun. He's super entertaining. But he's also an interesting character. The concept and the dynamics, because the idea is everybody has a number. You don't know anyone's name, And you kind of realize it's because he doesn't want people to get attached to each other. He doesn't want to, because he wants it to be about the mission, not the man. So it's an interesting movie. I definitely recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope everyone stays safe out there. Connor, thanks for being a part of our podcast this week.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was fun.
Andrew told me you had several notes and you really hated it. And so I'm like, do you want to come? We need you. I'm always going to invite people to shit on movies. Anyway, so yeah, this has been Movie Reel. I'm Samantha Tomlinson.
I'm Kevin Tracy.
And Connor, what's your name?
Oh, I mean, I'm Connor.
And that was Connor. Goodbye, everybody.